Hello, hi everyone. I hope you hear me okay because, well, I was sick 3 days ago, so my voice is a little bit weak, but hopefully, thanks to the mic, you can hear me pretty fine. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. This is the third time we're organizing an event on Web3 and this time this is Web3 and disinformation. And we're very happy to introduce that specific question in such an important time of the year. We saw that the fight against fake news, against disinformation, and the question more globally on how to regain trust on what we read, what we see, what we hear is a huge question in our democracies, especially in the time of wars. And we're very happy to welcome someone from Ukraine who has to face that, and I'll introduce the all panelists later. So I'm Leïla Mörch. I'm going to be the moderator today, and I just wanted, before starting the session, to let you know a bit more about where we are and what is the McCourt Institute. So the McCourt Institute is part of a broader project called Project Liberty. It was launched by Frank McCourt 1 year and a half ago, and it aims to transform how the internet works in order to, well, basically save our democracies. And that's a big deal. So we believe that the internet and the way it works, especially social media these days, are a major part of our lives, but yet the way they function, they bring sometimes more pains and sometimes more conflict in our lives than what they should do and what they could do. And we believe that using what we call Web3 technologies, especially blockchain, we can actually rebuild tech architecture of the web that would, by design, engage with more ethics and trust in the technologies as well as the governance. So Project Liberty is at the intersection of technology. We created a protocol that has been on chain for 2 days now. So this is a very exciting news that brings in the core of the technology new principles and new values like privacy, like self-sovereignty and everything. It's also a big question on governance, and we here at the McCourt Institute working on what should rule the internet, what should be the rules that would protect the users in the way technology are being regulated. And the McCourt Institute here in Sciences Po also exists in Georgetown University in Washington and aims really to create a bridge between the two continents and working for better regulation, for better tech. And at the end, we have the movement. We believe that even if we address the technology and the governance side, if we don't address the way users use technology and how we use products, we will actually never achieve it. So we have a lot of work to do on raising the awareness towards this question and engaging with civil society. So at the center is Project Liberty, and here we are at the McCourt Institute at Sciences Po, and we're very lucky, and we thank Sciences Po to host us in such an amazing campus. So, Web3 and disinformation, can Web3 restore trust online? What we try to do with this series of events on Web3 is not to promote Web3 in any ways, it's more to allow ourselves to ask some question about how blockchain can help or not on specific topic. At Project Liberty, we believe that blockchain can bring a lot of solution, but it will only be a success if we challenge it. It will only be a success if we try to find what's working better and what is not, and keep on what's working better. So this series of events, we had privacy, we had digital democracy, really try to go deeper on what blockchain can and cannot solve, and criticize the object so we can make it better for the future. We believe that the tech is not finished yet. It's gonna keep progressing as we see every day in this specific area. And so today we're gonna try to gather how, when it comes to trust, safety, and information, how Web3, as well as other solutions, can actually bring more clarity and more trust in the question of information. You have an app called Slido. If you scan this code, or if you enter the hashtag MIEvents, you can actually ask questions on the apps. You don't need to download the app, you can just go on Google or whatever research tool you're using, and just scan the QR code. It will allow you to ask questions during the whole panel, so we can know better what you want to hear about and how to maybe orient the discussion. We will put it again later. But yeah, so as a start, I would like to introduce our panelists. So on my extreme left, we have Claire Balva. She's the co-founder of Blockchain Partner, and I will allow her to introduce herself later on. We have Dominique Boullier. He's a sociologist, professor at Sciences Po, expert on the disinformation question. We have Iryna Volnytska. She's the president at SET University in Ukraine. And we have Louis-Victor de Franssu. He is the CEO of Tremau. What we're going to do is I'm going to allow each of them to have 5 minutes, between 3 and 5 minutes of introductory remarks when they can present themselves and start answer the question of Web3 and disinformation and what they think when they see this specific topic. And I'll give the floor for an introductory remark to Dominique.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I did. Oh, great! I cannot see the slides. Okay, so I just wanted to start by discussing what we understand as disinformation, which means here there is a situation of contradictory points of view. That is the basic level, and to say, well, some people will disagree, but the question now, as it is considered from the policy point of view, is that in fact we should target the sources and try to really label these sources as disinformation sources that should be should be eliminated. So the problem is that when you do that, in fact, you are just addressing a very small part, the bottom lines of the way disagreement is handled, you know. And this is the view that Wikipedia is using when trying to addressing the way we deal with disagreement. And you see that there are many other layers in which we can get further in handling the contradictory situation and handling the arguments and so on. So if we are just targeting the sources, we are just, and this is the main policy that is already in all the text and all those concerns by governments, in the end we are just addressing the idea of the ad hominem attack, I would say. So we are disqualifying some sources as the authority of these ones, and it's much more source checking than fact checking, you know. When we get into fact checking, we slide up the ladder, but it's not, I think if we are just focusing on these sources, it's a problem. Because, and this is where the Web3 can be very often requested to provide some certification, some way of authenticating the sources, and that could be considered as a solution. Well, the problem is if we limit ourselves to this, we are not really addressing a large part of the issues related to disinformation, because we are considering that labeling some sources as wrong ones is enough, you know. And of course, there are many ways to authenticate the sources. I'm not such an expert in this field, so many others will tell us about that. For instance, I'm more familiar with the experience by Berners-Lee about Solid and so on. So there are really interesting solutions to be sure that we can obtain a reliable system of selecting sources and so on. But the problem is that at the moment we address the sources and we try to focus on that, and at the same time you have other people who would say, well, it's just a problem of education. Young people should be trained in analyzing and selecting the best media and so on. We are not addressing one of the main issues, which is the design of the infrastructure of knowledge, what I call the infrastructure of knowledge, which is exactly our media system. And we are not getting into the way it's designed. And this is why I have the second slide, which is the best way to understand how this infrastructure of knowledge has been moving into a very high frequency system where people are reacting at high speed. This one was designed in 2009, you know, related and using data from it's Kleinberg and Leskovich and Kleinberg who designed that, relying on the collection of data from the presidential campaign and in 2008. You know, so it's a very old system compared to what we are experiencing now. But at this time already, it was so a high frequency mode of discussion in the public debate. That is really a concern that we should have, which is how we've been moved into, how we moved into an infrastructure where the speed, the rhythm, and the reactivity is the key feature, and not really addressing any kind of concern and control about the quality of the information and the quality of the arguments. So this is where I think what we should do is now to move into the design of this kind of rhythm, to the control of this speed, and to be sure that we are not completely trapped into virality. Because whatever the source is, if it's reliable or not, in the end, our minds, our attention is captured by this impulse, which is really a higher reactivity that is requested by this infrastructure. And this is not good. Even if the sources are reliable, it doesn't mean that it's really profitable for the public debate. So that's why I'm advocating some kind of way of slowing down all this rhythm, just first by making people aware of the fact that they are behaving at such a speed, with such a reactivity, that in fact they will completely pollute the minds of their partners in some way. So I think this is really a way of addressing the infrastructure issues, then giving them some opportunity to self-control, the reason they want to adopt, and then moving, if it doesn't work, moving into control by trusted authority and sanction if we can do that, you know. So what is important here is that in fact we will have the opportunity to let people keep control on the virality itself, and not just letting the selection of sources doing the right job, you know. So it's much more important for me to be aware of that. That's why for some part of it, I think the Web3 can help. I don't know exactly how. The problem being that we cannot just have the idea that we have a frictionless transaction, you know. In this situation, I propose to introduce more and more friction, which is a kind of contradiction with what all the idea around blockchain in some ways. But I think it's the only way to slow down the pace of the public debate, and to get people obliged to have reflexivity and not only reactivity. That's a way to fight disinformation that, from my point of view, may be helpful, and not only focusing on sources, for instance.
Thank you so much, and I'd like to go further later on the question of friction and how to bring back friction in our social media. Please, Iryna, if you can introduce yourself and introduce how you feel about this question.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for invitation. Actually, you will hear a lot about Ukraine today because I am Ukrainian, and actually we have a lot to tell you about blockchain, because I will tell about it a little bit later, but first I want to introduce myself. As I said, my name is Iryna, and I'm president of SET University. SET stands for Science, Entrepreneurship, and Technology. And actually, we are a very young university. We were launched 10 days before the war. And of course, the war changed our plans, but it didn't stop us. And right now, we have different courses, short-term courses for switchers in Ukraine, because it's the most important thing to do, because a lot of people, they lost their jobs, and the only sector which is growing in Ukraine is technology. Despite the war, we have 13% growth if you compare to the previous year. And a lot of people, they try to find job in technology, and that's actually what we try to help them with. Also, and for me, it's a new role. Actually, I'm not from academia. I used to work in technology. I worked as a CEO. I am advisor to the different startups. I am a member of UA Tech Circle. We connect Ukrainian startups with investors from Silicon Valley. And also, I work with the Ministry of Digital Transformation on IT educational reform, on special regime for IT companies. It's like a legal framework for IT companies. And yeah, thank you. The next slide, it's actually about Ukraine and about blockchain development in Ukraine. Thanks to our government, it's one reason, but we have a lot of reasons, because we have also a strong community in blockchain Ukraine. Ukraine now ranks second in cryptocurrency use. It's the entrance to Web3 technology. And also we legalized the crypto in Ukraine on the government level. And the adoption of cryptocurrency and of crypto is really very high in Ukraine. 15% of people, they own crypto. And we have a lot of startups. For example, unstoppable domains, near protocol, near UA. We have Solana and so on, and even during the war, unstoppable domains, it's a unicorn. It became a unicorn during the war, and the team is in Ukraine. I try to, I tell all of this because, I believe that Ukraine can be potentially a hub for blockchain development. And for blockchain, as I see and what I discussed with the blockchain companies, blockchain has a lot of issues, for example, the legal issues, the technical issues, but the biggest challenge is adoption. Because if you don't have users, for example, in our case, who read the news, media users, it never will make any difference. So, I think that it is very important to focus on adoption of blockchain technology. And in Ukraine, for example, we have a government app called Dia City. In this app, I have my passport, I have my driving license. I can pay taxes through this app. Also, in this app, I can vote for the next member of Eurovision, for example, how to rename the streets in Ukraine. We also use it to identify the enemy right now during the war. And this app, it also has a verification for Binance. So it's the entrance to Web3 world for people in Ukraine, because it's a challenge for non-tech savvy people to use blockchain products. We can create a lot of innovative solutions, but if no one uses it, it doesn't make any difference. So I believe that Ukraine can be a perfect playground to test all solutions in blockchain, and especially the media solutions, to fight the disinformation, because it's a huge issue in Ukraine, and I will tell about it later, but we have a problem with a media, social media, Facebook, Instagram. They deleted our posts, our accounts, and the algorithm of Instagram and Facebook, they are fully intransparent for us. So it's really an issue, and this is a good time to test all these products in Ukraine. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iryna. And this is very interesting because the fact that you believe bringing these kind of tools on the ground in such a kind of chaotic context. I would like to go deeper later, and we're gonna talk with Louis Victor and then back to Claire on how concretely can these tools help or not, and on what specific dimensions. Maybe Louis Victor, you can introduce yourself and tell us more about disinformation and what is done these days to fight it on maybe a governance level.
Thank you very much, Leïla. So, Louis Victor, I worked for the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs for a couple of years, and working specifically on these issues of disinformation. First of all, and I think as it was said, the issue of disinformation is not inherently linked to the web or to social media. It's just been worsened a lot by the speed, like Dominique said, by the ability of massive and coordinated attacks. And in fact, when we speak about disinformation, there's so many different elements to it. There's just the misinformation or the stupid, if somebody tells you it's a good idea to drink bleach to protect yourself against COVID, well, everybody's allowed to be stupid, and it's not the role of the state to stop you being stupid. The question behind is, what happens when it's propagated and becomes reality for a lot of people? That's one part of disinformation. But when we were working at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, the big aspect we were really looking at is, how do we protect our democracies from foreign state actors or foreign groups, not only state actors, that are trying to attack, to break down, to hurt the confidence of our citizens in our democratic way of life. And so we came up with a definition, which is also the one used in the French law on fake news, which is information manipulation. So we considered an attack as being a disinformation campaign if it was coordinated. So this gives an idea of artificial, massive, spreading of false or misleading information with the purpose of hurting, of having some political damage. Now we also added a fifth, because we're in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which was it had to be foreign actors. Because we all know that during a political campaign you have a lot of parties that use a lot of the same methods to attack one another. So we really were looking only on the foreign actors. As I was mentioning, a lot of states have tried to put in place new laws. So France had this law on fake news, which I think was used only once, or at least the first time it was used was against the government at the time, or one of the Ministry of Interior at the time. But Europe has also been working a lot on these issues. They worked on the EU Code of Practice Against Disinformation. There's the Rapid Alert System, which I know was also very much used by EU member states from Eastern Europe to try and protect themselves from attacks from certain states that were trying to propagate fake narratives. But really what is really going to make the difference, I think, is the new Digital Services Act, and it, in a way, it takes a step towards Web3, even though it doesn't address it, in the sense that contrary to the different or the first types of laws that have been put in place, which were really concentrated on the content itself, a bit like the same approach you'd have for terrorist content, for child sexual abuse material. For the first time, the Digital Services Act is taking a systemic approach to the issues of illegal or harmful content or disinformation online. And thinking really of how is the structure of these platforms, you were speaking about the opacity, how is the way the algorithms work, how is the way that they moderate the content online, how is that actually impacting the trust we are having as individuals into the system and into the information that is being spread on the systems. There's some very interesting elements. Why did I say it's starting to look a bit towards Web3? I mean, it's definitely not Web3, but looking in that direction. Is that you have this idea for all online platforms, so not only for very large online platforms, for all online platforms, will have to give the ability to their users to select criteria on which they can see or not see the elements on their timeline, for example. So the recommender systems will have a first level and really an initial level of being able to protect yourself and say, I don't want to be completely closed in by the algorithms. I want to be able to take a step out. There's a lot of work being done on transparency of advertisements, especially political advertisements, which is very, very important. And France has been pushing this quite far at the EU level. And then there's the issue or the proposition to have risk assessments for very large online platforms. So they will have to assess what is the risk that their own algorithms are posing to the spread of disinformation, misinformation on the platform. How is it inherently biased toward that type of information? And these risk assessments will have to be published, and the companies and the platforms will have to put in place a mitigation plan to be ensured that they will fight or make sure that they tackle the issues identified. What we see is that a lot of the issues around technology cannot be solved only by governments, because if you look at the Digital Services Act, there's already now questions of what does it mean, for example, in the Fediverse or with Mastodon. How does the DSA actually apply to Mastodon, and how is it going to push these individual servers to moderate or not their platform? And so governance alone will never be able to find the answer, and tech solutions by themselves, well, neither, because we see that you can push tech in a direction, but you need this always this conversation also with civil society. So that's why thank you very much, Leïla, for organizing these panels, which are essential for the future of our democracy and tech.
Definitely not working with my low voice and no mic. Thank you so much, Louis-Victor, for this very clear overview on how disinformation can be tackled nowadays with regulation and where do we stand these days. I would like now to turn to Claire. So what we try to do in this series of events is always trying to make people from with very different background and very different knowledge on the subject to kind of like link them together and make them challenge each other. So Claire is a co-founder of Blockchain Partner. She's gonna go deeper on the question of Web3 and what she knows on that specific topic and how blockchain can address some specific topic and some specific question right now. I would just before that add something that I learned actually this morning on the question of disinformation campaign that we live in. An EU lab specialized on fighting against disinformation actually managed to see that more than 60 websites, official information websites like Le Monde, like RFI, like a lot of information websites in Europe were actually counterfeit sites made by people who wanted to do disinformation. And what these people are doing, they take the IP address, they actually copy it, they change a little something at the end, they buy the domain, and they build a whole brand new website looking exactly like the official one. They just change the content in it. And I just found that so interesting because, well, I don't know how we can label that. It's not like deepfake, it's not like any of that. It's basically stealing identity from official website and using the fact that these websites still have the trust of the users when it comes to the information and to, deceive people, showing them information that they believe they can trust and that they actually cannot trust. And I just found that example very interesting because the question of labelization and the question of encryption of who is the owner, the real owner of this website, of this brand, is actually a big question in Web3, how we can regain trust by making sure that these people is the actual owner of that name or that pseudonym. So yeah, I just found that very interesting when it comes to the topic of Web3 and how we can bring back trusted labels. Now I'm going to turn to Claire. Please introduce yourself and express how you feel about that topic.
Well, thank you. So my name's Claire Balva. I co-founded in 2015 one of the first consultancy firms about blockchain and crypto in France. It was called Blockchain Partner. And basically what we did was help large companies understand blockchain, crypto, Web3 and all the related topics and create relevant projects on those technologies. Actually, we sold the company at the beginning of last year to KPMG. And now I'm doing independent consulting and I'm providing expertise to companies and institutions. When I saw the topic for the first time, I was quite surprised because it was the first time I saw those two words, Web3 and disinformation, side by side. And actually, the first thing I thought about was disinformation within Web3. Because Web3 is a very dynamic sector, mostly organized on social networks, especially Twitter, with a lot of viral content, with much marketing as well. So there's actually lots of disinformation within the Web3 area and the crypto communities. But of course, we can also think about how Web3 projects can help fight disinformation. But the thing is, for the past years, I've seen a lot of people think about blockchain as some kind of magic solution. When we think about blockchain, most of them think that blockchain will help certify whatever information that has value. And the thing is, it can work, but blockchain is only a very small part of the solution because it's a technical solution, it's an infrastructure solution, and it's like a safe box. So you can put information in it and it will not move, it will not change, and that's it. That's the only thing you can do with it if you want to use blockchain as a certification tool. So for me, it has a very limited value as it will not solve the who certifies problem. So this means that anyone can actually put information into the blockchain. So I don't see how blockchain as a certification tool would be a magic solution for the fight for disinformation. But there are Web3 projects that could be interesting for me, especially Web3 and decentralized social media, because those new social media offer a new governance model, a more decentralized governance model, and they can help also slow down the rhythm because some of them ask their users to pay when they post something, and they create models where users are the owners of their data. which forces or encourages users to think about what they publish, and it makes them more responsible about the data they create. And I think those models are also a new kind of competition, if they succeed, of course, to very large platforms such as Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And I do hope that this model would succeed, because then the big platforms would have to think about new models to implement. So I think this could actually be also part of the solution to fight disinformation. But it would not be magic as well, because those new media are not easy to regulate, because as they are decentralized, most of them do not have legal entities, for example, so they cannot be regulated as a company could be. So the state cannot create new laws, for example, or new rules to say those companies had to, I don't know, have a mitigation plan, for example. It doesn't exist. You would not even know who to send the letter to. So they can be a solution, but they also create new challenges, I think, for regulators.
Thank you, Claire, for this very, very interesting and balanced impression on how, indeed, and this is what we're trying to work on every day, blockchain is not magic at all, and we have to work on what it can bring to us and what it's not gonna bring, and how we can find other solution. I'm gonna turn back on Dominique. Dominique, so you were mentioning, and a lot of you actually did mention the question of the speed. And how more than the question of certification and authenticity of information, the velocity of how it actually goes from one platform to another, from one account to another, is one of the main issue when it comes to disinformation. If you could maybe go a little bit further on how the question of virality can maybe bring more disinformation, how does that work? And how we can help on keeping control to that with the question of friction you brought, and how to bring that friction.
Yeah, there are some quite a lot number of studies about the fact that the speed and the velocity of the virality itself create the conditions for the users to completely be trapped into this reactivity process, you know, and without any ability to criticize and to get back to where does it come from, how can I test and check somewhere else, and so on. So the fact is that the news, when you were speaking about the fake news, for instance, at the moment they get so successful, we should not consider that as the fact that I would say, as their intrinsic value is attracting people. You know, it's just the fact that some people get fascinated by this flat Earth stuff, or I don't know what. You know, well, in fact, it's only the fact that in some studies in data science and cognitive science as well are really demonstrating the fact that it's only the fact that it's shocking and breaking the habits that you have, which means that you are completely your attention itself is attracted by the novelty of it. So that's some scholars call novelty score. And the only fact of having that, you may react very fast and be able to propagate it at such in such a immediate moment, you know, that you create the opportunity for this news to get spread all over your relationship, all over your network, and it decreases the effect of virality. So it's not really the intrinsic value of it, it's not really the quality of the sources, it's only the fact that some contents and are really able to trigger some reactivity more than the others. What is behind that? It means that, for instance, all the agencies that are in charge of disseminating fake news or trying to create disinformation, even state ones, they are not just having a recipe which is really the good one and it will work every time they send a new message and they are sure to capture the attention of the large public. No, they are sending so many versions of it at so many moments in very different and disseminated style of communication that in the end, it's quite an evolutionist view of it. You send it and at the end, some of it will work. And the problem is that when this one will work, it will reach, that's why I talked about free reach. The problem is not free speech because you will not prevent people to think about the possibility of flat Earth and so on. But you can prevent them from reaching such an audience that at the end you cannot get back to demonstrate that this first statement is wrong. because it's always too late and people have changed their mind and think about something else. So that's why the status of the disinformation is related to the speed and the virality process itself, which is a question of infrastructure design, which means the algorithms themselves are designed so that they trigger the more reactivity they can. And of course, some people know that, and some are able to use that. The fact that it's designed for this reason is, of course, I didn't mention it, but it's for advertising purposes. Of course, it's the way this platform will generate their own revenues. So the moment the people are engaged, as we say, because engagement is the key factor, at this moment, when you do that, of course, you can have some more opportunities to sell advertisement opportunities for the brands. But the problem is, how can we address that so that the slowdown of this rhythm, of course, it will affect not only the bad ones, the fake news, but also the really valuable ones. But why not? Why not? We just can wait 1 hour or 1 day when you are getting into such a that's unbelievable. 1 day, reacting to a tweet 1 day later. Oh my God! No, but of course, when you see how all our public life is completely contaminated by this reactivity, such a very low level of reflexivity, and where people are just not able to get into the disagreement debate, because disagreement, contradictory process, is a good thing. So we need to have this debate, not only in the news public life, but also in the justice and law issues, in scientific issues, in police issues, and so on. You have always this contradictory aspect. If you don't have enough time to do that, you will lose all the value of our democratic processes, be it on the side of the scientific activity or other,
Thank you so much, Dominique. So I hear three things in what you say. I hear the issue, and I hear the fact that we need to slow down, bring more friction, and make people think about what they're doing, so have more reflection. I believe that for that we have yet three tools. We have regulation, and I'm going to turn back to Louis Victor in a minute about that, and how can government push these platforms to slow down the algorithm, and do they have what it takes to make that happen? Is it possible? We have the question of infrastructure, tech design. So I'm going to turn back later on Claire on the specific topic, and how, if regulation fail, should we change the tech, and how we can redesign and rethink the tech. And I'll give a little word on that, because this is actually something Project Liberty is working on a lot. And we have then the question of education. And education in many ways. Education to the tool, education as a way of behaving, as a way of acting in society, education as a way of, teach critical thinking to kids where they're young and everything. And I'll turn back on that specific topic and to Iryna. So maybe, Louis Victor, you can jump on the regulation part of what Dominique just said, on how can we slow down the way information circulates on the web.
Thank you very much. But if we want to slow down the way information works, we should go well beyond the web and also think about CNN, Fox News, CNews, BFM TV, which are also, a big part of the virality issue about news and around the inability to have contradictory debates in our democracies today. I'd also like to jump on a point you made, Dominique, because I think it is an example I saw when I was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which was very telling. During the presidential campaign in the US, we had the occasion to visit the Bloomberg headquarters. And the Bloomberg headquarters, they were very proud because they had developed these AIs, algorithms they had created over 10,000 personalized messages that were being sent through social media to people across the US. If you had a gun, then you'll have that ad. If you were this, if you went to church, you'll have that ad. And so you could have those two people, neighbors, having two different messages from the same campaign on potentially different. And how can you have a public debate? How can you have a healthy public debate when you don't even see the same information around the candidate? So there's also, and this is where I see there's a potential pro of Web3, where I really see where Web2 can make a difference is on the virality. There's going to be a lot of questions, but really is the ability to slow down the target advertising, which is really also which can be used by good actors, but can also be used by bad actors, or even good actors, but that are actually causing more harm than they are solving. In terms of regulation, I'll just go to this. Well, in terms of the web in which we live today, the very large online platforms will have to, as I was mentioning before, assess the way in which the algorithms can be abused to propagate information that is false in a way that's very fast and massive. We have yet to see how these risk assessments are actually going to be implemented, what are going to be the criteria used, how they're going to be made transparent, what's the Commission going to do about them. But it's a first step. It's a first step there. But just to answer one of the things you said just afterwards, Leïla, I don't think regulators by themselves will ever find the solution. And I think that technology needs to be a forceful proposition to be able to find solutions and help find solutions that solve part of these problems that it created.
Thank you so much. And yes, unfortunately, I don't believe it either. So we're gonna need to give them a little push and help them. I would like to turn back to Claire on the question of the infrastructure. So as Dominique was saying, it's not only a question of sources of labelization and everything. It's also a question of circulation and how the infrastructure is designed. You mentioned earlier that blockchain could help build more decentralized and so more smaller social media with smaller audience, and the way that people connect maybe can be, circulating more inside of a specific community that will rely on the same information, and maybe not create this kind of like big lake of information where people just drop things and it just mitigate in a way we don't really know how, and you mentioned that, some new challenges. I'm just going to do a little aparté on that because, as I mentioned earlier, Project Liberty is working on the tech part as well and on the infrastructure of the web. And we've been creating a protocol called the Decentralized Social Network Protocol that aims actually to resync on the layer 1 of the web. So it's only tackling a part of the tech infrastructure, but it's tackling a big part. Rethink how we actually can build or maybe like change new social media. And how does it work? It actually believes that the way people interact online is through what we call a social graph. It's basically a kind of like galaxy of data that go and evolve around us, and that are made of who we know, how we interact, the kind of reaction and comments we make online, who we are linked to, and everything. And this is a big collection of data. And we believe that if we make, by design, this data, if we make sure that people own this data, on whatever they're doing online and the interaction they have and the people they know and everything, we could cut from the source all of the big pains, and maybe you could go back on that later, of what we call today the data economy, as well as the intention economy, that basically bring the kind of addiction that Dominique was mentioning earlier, where the social media, the way they form now, actually need you to engage as much as possible, not on the quality, from a quality perspective, but from a quantity perspective, because they need to keep you online, because this is how they work, how the business model works. And so we believe, to go back on what I was saying, that if we, from the beginning, make sure that the data that people create and express online migrate back to them and they have an ownership, it could create new challenges, but it could also make from the beginning this kind of like unhealthy economic situation of social media disappear, and then build a new way for social media to function more based on quality and inter-community and everything. So I'll give Claire the floor on the question of rebuilding the infrastructure, and maybe and I heard what you were saying on the certification, and I do agree it's very complicated to make sure that the information inside of the box, even if it's not censored, is true. I would therefore try to know on the question of identifying, for example, the IP address that I was mentioning earlier, how maybe blockchain on that specific topic can help certify with a community of people who have the possibility to certify and someone else not, the fact that the website you're on is actually an authentic website. So, yeah.
Yes, about that topic, about certification, usually when you certify some digital data, the question is, where do you put that data? Where do you put the IP address, for example? And usually you put it in a very secure database, and there's an institutional actor saying, okay, I certified it. Here's the link to my secure database. So what blockchain changes is that you can, instead of that database, put the data within the blockchain, which makes it more secure, because the blockchain cannot be hacked, or at least it's much more difficult to hack than this the centralized database of the institutional actor. So it can be a cybersecurity solution, but for me, it's not like a breakthrough solution to fight disinformation. About new models, of course, they are more decentralized. The users have more power on their data. But for me, the question is, will it work? Will it be attractive enough for users to come to this platform? Because for the moment, users are more attracted to like those big lakes of information. What's interesting is that those new models have maybe less needs in terms of money making. They're not like Facebook, who actually wants to spread all around the world and who wants to earn much money from big companies who do advertising on the platform, etc. So, of course, those new decentralized models for me are much more interesting and much more healthy than centralized platform. However, the key point is more social and political and cultural and not technical, because we can have great alternative models on the side, but if no one goes to it, then what's the point? And I don't see any miracle coming that would bring all those billions of users of Facebook, all those viewers from CNN to those new alternative models. What could work is actually allow people to own their data and maybe make money. That could be an economic incentive, because if you create, I don't know, content, images, if you actually still own your photographs when you put it on a new social media, and you can, I don't know, earn royalties, maybe it could encourage people to go on those new medias. But for the moment, this is very prospective. I don't see it right now. So I don't think technology would be like the solution as itself. I think the need for regulation is much more urgent than the need for new technologies.
And this is why they work together on trying to change on the different parts. What you say basically is, again, what you mentioned earlier, that this is also a question of education and societal choice, and how people decide that, no, it's not okay anymore to sell my data, or it's not okay anymore to like be able to respond to a tweet in half of a second. All of that is a way of making people behavior different. And for that, I would like to turn to Iryna, and on the question of education. Well, as a president of a university, the question of education is something I believe you see quite often, from very young to maybe like much older. And I would like to turn on your side, because maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe it's not the case, but with what happened in Ukraine, I believe like the population had to adapt on a lot of things very quickly. Like they had to learn this question of disinformation. They had to learn, because there was an urgency to change the way they behave, to change the way they tackle information and everything. So I would like to know, on a very specific spot of Ukraine, how do you think the population reacted to this big change of perspective, and how they managed to adapt the way they behave, maybe towards information, maybe towards regulation and everything? How did they change? How do they act with the app? Did they change the way they use social media? Is it possible for society, when they actually have the knowledge that something big is happening, to act quickly? Because this is a question of how fast can people move from their habits. So this is a big question, even if it's kind of like an extraordinary situation. Like not everybody should start changing when they're facing war, but how does it happen on your territory? The other question is, how can we bring to people the knowledge and the skills to use this new technology? Or maybe the more there will be skills, maybe the more they will be able to make the change on the technology part, if governance is going too slow.
Yeah, actually, when the war started, what we did at SET University, first we launched the cybersecurity platform for teens just to fight disinformation, because there were like a lot of information around and no one knew what is happening. And like it was our first step. After we also created a courses in cyber hygiene, I would say. It's not cybersecurity, it's like a short course to detect the information, to understand what is happening. And right now we have a course in AI, how to detect like artificial intelligence, how for developers, how to detect the fake information and how to work with it. We had a lot of problems with like Facebook, Instagram, because from the beginning of the war, they started to delete accounts of Ukrainian officials. They block our posts, and the algorithm of Facebook or Instagram, it's like totally intransparent for us. We don't understand what is happening. But okay, we understand that. Okay, we can't post like photos of like dead people. Okay, but we try to post like ruined buildings and so on, and still these posts are deleted. And of course, and it's a problem. So we contacted the like Facebook's Facebook manager and so on, but they didn't give us the answer how they work and why it was deleted. They just said it's like algorithm. And for Ukraine, it's a crucial question. Especially now, because it can cost lives. It's always important, but now it's like an urgent question. And what we try to do, we try to educate people, not only like technical education, like education in technology, but also to give this some soft skills like critical thinking and so on, just to make them think why it is happening. And we have some accounts for our officials, like in the Telegram, in WhatsApp, where they can read the news also, not only Facebook. And when the war started, the adoption of blockchain technology, we have now a lot of products in blockchain. The adoption rate of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, Ukraine, before the war, Ukraine was on the fourth place. Now it is on the second. So people started to look for some alternative technologies where they have the news, where they can work, even have to do the donations. And I believe that it is like really very important. But the problem with Web3, that, as Claire said, is the adoption of this new technology, because blockchain is like very interesting and technology, and yeah, like it provides us with a lot of opportunities, but it is hard to use these opportunities. For example, our switch from Web 1 to Web 2, it was very user-friendly. Like Web 2 has more pictures and so on. That's what we like. And like people in general, I don't want to say it, but I can't find another word in English. Like people are lazy. They don't want to do like an extra effort to learn something, to do something. So all our products, successful products, they are based on like very user-friendly experience, and on your like addictions to sell something, to buy something, whatever it is. And it's like the thing that blockchain doesn't have right now. And even if we create a lot of innovative, cool solutions that will fight disinformation, for any other spheres of life, but if the end users, like readers, if they don't read it, if they don't use it, it makes like no sense. That's why we think that it is important to educate people, and not only the blockchain technology, how to code, why to code, and so on, but also to teach the different groups of people, different social groups, people of different ages. What is blockchain, how to use it. We should try to do products more user-friendly. And yeah, like actually even in the media, media products, you can find some options like to monetize your content even in blockchain. So I think that what we need to do, and I said in Ukraine, we try to make blockchain more understandable by people with even this government app, Dear City, which is like, to be a part of blockchain, you have this. You need to have like at least a crypto wallet, yes. And like, how many people in this room has a crypto wallets? Like, this is the answer. Like for everything, we need to popularize the blockchain technology, to make it more easier to use, and so on.
Thank you so much, Iryna. Yeah, indeed, the question of education and how to use new tools is always a big challenge. And sometimes I think about changing the way we act toward the web as a big population, the way we made a change when it comes to organic food. And I believe, like, at the beginning, what we were, like eating and putting more price in an apple that would look exactly the same but would be organic was something completely, like, strange to people. Like, they didn't think about doing that. And more, like, the question was coming inside of the population is still not shared by a lot of people. Is still an elite product on a lot of way, but it's the fact that organic food became as a very, very small amount of dissemination, and now is coming more broadly and raise the awareness about, it's important what you put in your body. Maybe we could have the same kind of campaign as it's important what you put in front of your eyes or in your ears. Could be interesting on this specific point of view on how to create and educate. The question then of the tools and how to make them more user-friendly, when actually they try to stop people from getting the kind of like dose, the addiction they have, plus putting kind of like a technological step to move forward is indeed a great challenge. And I believe like one of the biggest challenges Web3, but any kind of new tools, actually, not only blockchain, but a lot of new tools will have to face is actually make it attractive for people to put that effort, or at least making that effort as low as possible. And we see a lot of new startups working on making the creation of this wallet actually super user-friendly. When we first started to use email, it was kind of like super chaotic to create an email address. Like, people had no clue. And now you can like click and boom, you have an email address. So maybe we could see also the tech evolve, and not only on the blockchain side, on a lot of kind of like new tech side. When it comes to the user-friendly app, and I think about Mastodon, that a lot of people actually, like make like the new opportunity of Twitter, it has the question of how much of algorithm and recommendation algorithm do we want? Because one of the things that Mastodon kind of like is actually the fact that they are very user-friendly, because they give you a nice and easy way to go through the app, and the fact that they have recommendation algorithm are good. And how to find the right balance between transparency of these algorithms and not maybe make them disappear the next day, because then, like the best is the enemy of the good, like we would have an ideal platform, but no one would like to go on it because it wouldn't be as easy, as user-friendly, we wouldn't have these recommendations. So how can we find, how can we not lose what social media brings us that are very interesting? And the algorithm on Twitter sometimes are very amazing, but can we make them more transparent, more secure? Can we make sure that they are accountable for what they're doing? Exactly what Iryna was saying. If they delete something, how can they be accountable for that? And then we can go very close to the question of censorship and how the algorithm cannot always be the excuse when it comes to that. I'm gonna ask for each of you to react on a lot of that, and then I'm gonna start to go into the question, because some people did ask quite a lot of questions on Slido. Claire, you seems
yes.
You wanted to react? Go for it.
Yes, because there's been a lot of progress in user experience in the past years in Web3. But the truth is that technology can evolve, but people also need to evolve. You say emails are much more easy to use. That's true. But my grandmother couldn't use emails, even if they were easy to use. So there's a matter of education for people. And the thing is, Web3 puts more responsibility on people than Web2. So it is normal if it's not as easy to use as Web2. And for me, one thing that could increase adoption of Web3 is actually the use of money and the use of cryptocurrencies, because we were talking about crypto wallets. People who actually have crypto wallets are people who use cryptocurrencies, are people who use Ether, Bitcoin, stable coins, whatsoever. And that's the thing with Web3. I've seen in the past years many people talk about blockchain, talk about ICOs, talk about tokens, talk about Web3, metaverse, NFTs, whatever, but we're never talking about currency and cryptocurrencies, because this is the political and this is the difficult topic to address. But the truth is, Web3 will never thrive if people do not use cryptocurrencies. And that's the main thing that the regulators also don't want to see, because regulators usually don't want people to use cryptocurrencies. And for me, we can talk about Web3 for years, but as long as we're not talking about cryptocurrencies adoption, there won't be any Web3 adoption.
That's an interesting point of view. And indeed, I came into the Web3 world through crypto and buying my first coins, even if I never bought Bitcoin. But Dominique, you seem... I know, so Louis Victor wanted to react. Maybe Louis Victor can react very quickly, and then Dominique?
So just one word, because I completely agree with what you said, and I think it touches upon another very important aspect to this Web3, and you spoke about Mastodon, is also about the business model of these servers, because ultimately, the issues around content moderation, around how transparent they are, around what content do each server allow or don't allow on their platform, is going to go from Web 2 to Web 3. And the issue around, there's censorship issues, but even before we go to the censorship issues, I think we all agree that we don't want to see child sexual abuse material flourish across these servers. So how are they going to moderate? How are they going to pay for these moderators or for these systems, for the algorithms? And so the currency issue is also linked to the business model of these platforms and how you can make sure that there's actually a business to be done out of these servers, and that they can thrive. And if, of course, then it poses the question of, okay, if you can't sell the data, if these platforms can't sell the data of their users, what are they going to make the money from? Is it through paying? But then we know that the free model is always more attractive as well. So there's a lot of questions to be asked around all these. So thank you.
Thank you. And Dominique, so I want you to react on what you were about to say. I also feel like we did a big of screening of what are the issue and what are the pains. Maybe if you could also mention the kind of solution you've been working on, because I know you've been working on quite a lot of solutions. And so, yeah, if you can react on what you wanted to say and move forward to what can we expect, aside from, as you said, education and maybe new technology uses.
Well, I think you're right in addressing the issue of the what we call now user experience, and the fact that the user-friendly part is important, because from the user point of view, it's only the interface which is the experience and the connecting point with the whole system. So when we speak about the transforming the architecture of the data, of the process, and so on, we need to be aware of how it is displayed in a specific interface in some way. And I've been developing that in my company previously, and I've been also creating user labs and so on in France, and teaching user experience at EPFL. And my experience, my personal experience on that, is there is some kind of tricky situation in that, because we developed as scientists, as from cognitive science and social science and so on, we developed in data science, we developed interfaces and understanding of how people could be more comfortable in using these technologies. That was exactly what we did during the years 2000. And the problem is that 5-6 years later, this kind of improvements for the comfort and the reliability and the ability for people to appropriate this kind of interfaces, they get transformed and captured by what we call now captology. I mean, these guys who were able to reuse and to reinvent what we discovered in the cognitive part of it, so that the lessons we learn and how people can be comfortable in using and getting used to some specific interface, it got transformed into a way of capturing their attention and maintaining them on the website, on the app. As we know, the platforms are really clever in doing that. Why do I mention that? It's because when you try to introduce less friction, that's still a discussion in there, it may be both. It may work both ways, you know. In some ways, it can create opacity in such a way that we are completely unable as users to understand exactly what is the process going on and be unable to control that. And that's why I completely agreed with you, Claire, when you said that you need to understand how the technology itself is embedded within a legal framework, a business model, an organizational design, and so on. So we need to think about the alignment of all these features in order to make sure that it's not completely transformed or perverted in a different way, you know. But I do not agree with you on the second aspect of your talk about the fact that you mentioned that one solution could be the monetizing of that, because it gets back to the educational issue. Because when you are getting into this kind of design, the one incentive, when the incentive should be that you are the owner of your data, you are able to make money with that, to monetize that, we are training people to get completely trapped into the speculation world, which is really the basic background of all these choices in architecture. You know, that's why it's completely, it could be transformed into the exact opposite of what we're looking for. And my example, I published a paper about Roblox, you know. You should read the paper, but also understand exactly what Roblox is doing, because this is the prefiguration of what Meta is considering as the way we can monetize everything on such metaverse, for instance. And Roblox is exactly doing that for youngsters that are less than 13 years old, you know. And what is the problem is that you get them trained in a very specific educational model, which is based on how to make profit of everything, of personas, of avatars, of whatever you want, you know, and then of experience, because it's called experience on Roblox that you sell. And then you have this, it's not cryptocurrency, it's Robux, but in the end, it comes to the fact that you get used to this play on currencies and the fact that you can get into this speculative behavior. And the problem is, for the sake of blockchain perspective, I would say, we should get rid of all the speculative embeddedness of all this technology within some system like, of course, we are all aware of the fall of the crypto exchange platforms now. You know, if we can get rid of that, maybe the debate can get back to real educational value of this technology, and so that the design of the technology itself, of the Web3 design, can be embedded in a different value, business, and legal model that can make it really valuable for the public good, you know?
Yeah, and honestly, I couldn't agree more with you, because even if I understand from the clear perspective the fact that if we want to increase or make the adoption go faster, when it comes to indeed try to attract maybe people from the money part, I do agree with you the fact that if when it comes to social media, we add this question of monetization, when it's already a big question of the fact that we are being monetized literally every day, and we would like to leave that kind of like crazy loop that makes us go like try to have more and more profit. If we go inside of that loop, we might use a new technology faster, but kind of like create a new huge issue when it comes to financiarization. And I know this is not what you wish either on your side, Claire. And I'm super happy to tell you, Dominique, that when it comes to the protocol we've been creating, it's actually one of the first protocol that is not linked to any financial incentive at all. And this is kind of like one of the first value we try to embody in the code, in the fact that for the first time we believe that if we stop the correlation between financiarization, either of the data, either whatever, and the way the tool is used and the way the protocol is created, we can have something healthier for the beginning. So maybe it's harder to make people attract to that, but on the long term, we believe that it's going to work better. And this is why from the very beginning, we were like, oh, we cannot have something where the token is linked to a financial asset, because otherwise that would be what would. So yeah, I think you'd be happy to see that, and I'd be happy to read your paper. I would like to move on the Q&A part. Did any of you wanted to react more on what was said, or are you happy to move on the question part? Go for it, Iryna.
Actually, like only one sentence, that the adoption of blockchain, it's only the question of motivation. Actually, And for example, like my mother says she is 60, and 3 months ago I taught her how to DDoS Russian websites. So it's like very, if you have a motivation to use blockchain, you will find a way to use it. And that's why I think that it is like very important to educate people what is blockchain, why it is important, and what it can, how it can help. And I don't see it's happening actually all over the world, like as a basic education. Yeah, that's it.
Indeed, trying to work on the laziness of people, that indeed is a huge issue for societies. If I move to the question part, maybe could you, Sarah, show again the QR code? So if people want to scan and ask more questions, you're more than welcome. So I have a question for Iryna. Could you discuss the challenges with the uptake and use of the app that you had mentioned? You mentioned the app where you have everything, stores, passports, etc., especially regarding security.
Yeah, actually, this is I was in the conference, Berkeley conference, with the Ministry of Digital Transformation, who actually created this app, and it was like the only question that people asked the guys, the officials, and what they said, we didn't have, from my personal experience and from what I know, that we didn't have any problems with it. In the last, it's 2 years of existence of this app, and we never faced it. As far as I know, that all the data they are protected. That's what they say actually, and how they protect the data, what technologies they use, where their data centers, I don't know, and where they keep the data. So that's the only answer that I can give regarding the DIA app. But the app is very useful, and it's great.
Okay, so I think that's something to try to dig into how the app powered basically in Ukraine. And what you introduce us makes me think a lot to the Estonian kind of infrastructure, the KYC, Estonian KYC, that is very, very, very interesting. And I would actually like one day to do a whole talk about that and trying to see how it works and what could work, because it's powered by blockchain, but only on the part that where it can be useful and actually bring some values to it. So I think it would be a very interesting kind of concrete example to look into, and we could compare that with what's happening in Ukraine. Claire, could you give up what you mean when you say that ownership of user data in decentralized social media, and can make user reflect more on what they publish?
Well, two possible things, but this is going to be linked with monetization and or paying to publish data. When you are the owner of your data, it means that the data is linked to your wallet, or that the data itself is embedded in a token that could be an NFT or whatever token. So it means that there is a technical link between you and your wallet and the data. And this link doesn't exist today. Actually, you have an account, you publish data, you can actually delete it, anyone can copy it, can publish it again. That would not be possible with certain decentralized social media. And actually, when you pay to create data, or you pay to create a token, I think you think twice before creating it, because even if the fee is very low, it's not the same when you have to pay, 20 cents, than when you actually pay nothing. And if you publish data that can have value, it could be, music or a text or a photograph, then it makes sense to think about the value of the data itself. So you are more concerned, I think, with what you publish, but also because you could sell it, but I know Dominique won't like it. But this could actually make users more responsible.
That's interesting, and indeed trying to have kind of like a small, even like tax every time you post something, to be like it's not free of consequences, basically. So try to embody it in
No,
like
because
it's not free at all.
technically speaking, when you create a token, for example, on the blockchain, there's a transaction. So it's an empty transaction. It means you do not transfer money to someone, but you deploy it through a transaction, and transactions are not free of charge on public blockchains.
And
so
I do agree on that, because what I was saying before is like we on the protocol are using token. We're just using quite so many different tokens for different communities that actually they're not linked to any kind of like real world financial incentive. But we do use token, and we do make transaction, and indeed we make a little cost at every transaction, so that makes people regarding more like, oh, I'm not gonna like post 5 things, delete 3, post again like 10, and am I sure that this meme is like worth the cost of the transaction? So it's not a transaction in a way to monetize the content. It's more a transaction as a way to use the infrastructure, and kind of like a tax to use infrastructure. That can help slow down and make Dominique and Claire agree, which is already a miracle. No, I'm talking on sorry. But yeah, a way of like, kind of like to have the authorization to use that protocol, you need to pay a very small amount. So it's very interesting on that part. I'm gonna go on the following question for Dominique. What specific role do you see for historical media and professional journalists in a more tech, not to say Web3, but in more tech-based info ecosystem? So the more and more we have like a tech ecosystem when it comes to social media, what do you see as a role for historical media and professional journalists?
Well, I think we are really suffering from their disqualification, I would say, with the social media. The fact that the intermediaries, these gatekeepers that are really the one that were in position and with the legitimacy of making a hierarchization of all this hierarchy of the information, this role has been completely undermined by the activity of social media. So now we are really facing the situation where we should recover some power of hierarchization. That's why I mentioned the fact that people should be slow down in the way they react, because when you retweet something, you don't do any hierarchy, you know, and that's a problem, you know. So maybe we can make them pay each time they tweet, but I didn't get so far. So I think the other part of the system is very important. The problem being that even the media, and you mentioned that before, and I didn't have the time to talk about that my first presentation, but it's very important to include this mass media within this, what Ben Clare used to call the attention backbone, which is made of social media and mass media. So how can we be sure that the journalists themselves are not trapped into the rhythm of the large social media environment, you know? And this is the case with only with the trending topics on Twitter. That's enough for them to have kind of editorial choices that are already available there, you know. And that's a real problem, because it's the mass media are amplifying this process. That's critical. But how can we make them play a role in that? As the fact that they must be the one that could prevent the sphere of public debate to get contaminated so much by the rhythm of this specific trigger for attention, which are the even the hashtags and so on. We cannot think about the issues and the discussion that we have through hashtags, for instance. In the cognitive aspect of it is really significant. You know, you think in hashtags. You know, the problem is that issues must be framed in such a way that you are really able to envision the complexity of it. Of course, it's slow down stuff. Okay, people are really not ready to do that. But if we are all trapped into that, if there are no space where there is at least this protection for the debate over the complexity of the issues, well, there's no use having media, you know, mass media. I mean, a journalist. You should get back to the fact that you just have the flow of information and you react, and then you make online polls and you make decisions. No parliament are required and so on. Well, that's fine. No, but it's a very different kind of democracy. So they still have a very important role to do, but they need to disentangle the activity they have with the rhythm, the prescription, and the implicit rules that are put on as the main rule by the social media. That's a real issue for them now, because they are trapped as much as all the other stakeholders. You know, it's feeling that if you are not there, you will lose your reputation, you will lose your position, your influence, power, and so on. Now, let's stop it.
The classical fear of missing out, in a way. The FOMO we all know. We talk a lot, and it goes with education again. Do we really need to feel that FOMO? How that kind of like FOMO and that addiction goes into our brain and makes us as a society addicted to this way of acting? We talk a lot about education. What does it think we want to teach? How do we teach to adults? And does it work? And I would like Iryna maybe to jump on that.
It's actually a good question. What we do right now at SET University, we try to teach blockchain technology. What is it, how it used, and we teach software developers. But we also teach them how to turn this technology into business, how to create startups. So it's like the first step for them to create their own products in blockchain. And of course, they also need to think. They will need to think about how to use it, how to promote it, how to make the adoption of blockchain higher, and so on. And actually, I have a good, interesting case of Binance. Binance is helping a lot to Ukraine. They gave us money for education, but what they want to get back, as I told, they have the verification for their crypto. I forgot the name in English. This is the verification for Binance in our Dia app, and they gave money to educate people in blockchain. So they try to the Binance Academy. Crypto exchange. That's what the word. Yeah, the word Binance, the crypto exchange. Verification for this crypto exchange, and they try to promote it, but still. You can do it in different ways, and what we saw in Ukraine, that in the beginning it was very responsible. The cryptocurrency, crypto exchanges, it was gambling for people. So maybe in future we also think about this and to regulate it on some way, but we still think how. I know that government is thinking about it, and right now they try to make this rate of adoption higher, but in the same way they provide the people, the population, with all the risks that can bring cryptocurrency in this way.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Iryna. I'm going to turn to Victor. We talk about smaller network with less personal data and less information, but Discord or Telegram correspond to the description. Are there less disinfo?
No, a lot more. In fact, well, I don't know if a lot more, but if you look at Telegram is being used right now by by Russian state actors we know, but a lot of other actors as well to propagate information. And platforms like Telegram, it's less the case with Discord, but platforms like Telegram hide behind the fact that they have end-to-end encryption to say that they can't do anything about it, which is not true, by the way. But I think, and that's the whole problem we are going to have, and it's very good examples with the example of Mastodon or Web3 is also when you have a lot of smaller servers, then in reality you could have smaller servers that are very good at propagating disinformation, and you'll very quickly see that there's going to be a network of small servers where you have crossovers, and so the information will continue to spill from one server to another server to another server, making the issue of disinformation, which is the issue of virality and speed, that's not going to solve, I don't think, the problem per se. For Discord, there's another big question as well, is to say who is ultimately responsible. Discord sometimes says it's not responsible for the content that's posted on this platform, since it's rents out servers or spaces or groups to its clients. Would see how the regulators react to that, because I'm not 100% convinced of that idea, especially that they have terms of policies that apply across the different groups. So yeah, so I don't think that Telegram is any better. It's probably, if you compare it to WhatsApp, for example, it's probably worse for disinformation.
Okay, so back again on the question of, even if it's smaller, how can we make them use in a better way? And how can, like, the fact that they're small cannot actually be like they're not controlled, and they become kind of like free fake space. So yeah, this is interesting to know that actually, even if you create smaller platforms, this disinformation continue to spread. My question then would be, does the disinformation spread a lot on the platform, or does it go outside of the platform? Because again, does it cross-contaminate between small different groups, but then does it leave the platform and go into the mainstream media the way that it does happen on Twitter?
Well, I think one of the examples is we had, remember this horrible event 1 or 2 weeks ago where this Wagner soldier, I don't know if you could call the soldier, was executed by his fellow army men by a sledgehammer. The video was initially posted on Telegram, and then it made so it's not disinformation, but you could see it's direct crossover from one first platform across to different platforms. We know that Telegram is being used by terrorist actors as well. Even though Telegram has done a lot of work on this in recent months and years. But again, there's a spillover from that platform then to other platforms as well. And that would be the same for disinformation. And we saw it with WhatsApp as well. I mean, during the Brazilian election, it was very clear that you had huge WhatsApp groups that were forwarding. So WhatsApp is bigger than Telegram probably, but they have the same. It's a chat functionality which you have potentially limitless or very large groups, and you could see that it was really being used to propagate misinformation, disinformation around the elections at the time.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna take one last question for Claire very quickly, and then she's gonna have to run, and we're gonna take the rest of the question out of the Q&A question basically here in the room. This is kind of like a funny question. So Claire, can you convince me in 3 minutes, maybe less, why I should use cryptocurrency? Imagine I'm a rich person with some knowledge of blockchain, and I would take that question and jump on another one, where on the idea of monetization, then if I'm not a rich person, will not this model create an elitist Web3 not inclusive, with only people able to pay for it have access to those resources?
Yes, that's a very good question. Well, for the first part of the question, I don't think that if you live in countries like France, you absolutely need to use cryptocurrencies, because we have a stable currency. So you can actually invest in cryptocurrencies like you would invest in stock, for example. But it's more an investment than actually using. For the second part of the question, it's very interesting because, of course, if you have to pay to post something on social media, rich people could actually post a lot more things than poor people. One solution, but I don't have a very strong opinion about it, is that we could actually use, I don't know, something like carbon passports, rather than actually prices in euros or in currencies to do that. And those are very difficult debates, of course. But if there are carbon credits in the digital area, people would be equal in their freedom of speech within social media. You could actually spend a very small amount, also depending on what you post, because if you post very heavy files, very heavy pictures, maybe the cost would be a bit higher than if you post, I don't know, three words only. So that could be a solution, but this is a difficult political debate, so I don't even know what my own opinion is on that.
No, thank you. There is like so much like question coming on my phone right now, but we won't have the time to address all of them. So please, for the one who asked the question, you can ask us a question as soon as we close the session, so Claire can run. But thank you all for all of these questions. They're actually like, I would really like to go into them, so please come and discuss them with us. With the traceability, the unique ID, how can manipulation of pictures can be traced and everything. This is very interesting. Thank you for all the speakers for coming today. Thank you for people following online. We know that Sciences Po has quite a quite a big reach on that question. So as soon as we finish, the replay will be available for you to disseminate, to inform people instead of disinform them. I hope you enjoyed it, and please enjoy the drinks, juice, breakfast. We're super happy to have you here, and I believe, this is the last one of the year for the Web3N, so we'll let you know moving forward in the next year what is planned on that topic. Thank you so much.